Hi, I'm Jesse. This is One Block at a Time, and this is Block Beautiful. So, Block Beautiful may sound a bit pretentious, but it isn't just a name I made up because the street is pretty. It was coined in the press over 100 years ago to refer to 19th Street between 3rd Avenue and Irving Place. So, around the turn of the 20th century, land was still very available and plentiful uptown in Manhattan. And so it was normal for the upper class to build new homes as they moved uptown. The old homes were often left to fall into disarray sometimes, or lower income residents would move in. It took an architect named Frederick Sterner to reverse this trend. He came up with something new, remodeling, redesigning a home to make it look different and trendier. This was something, surprisingly, that hadn't really been done before. All of a sudden he did it, and this is where it started on this block. Most of the buildings in this street were built in the 1850s. In 1906, Sterner moved into this house here, and he gave it his signature style. A coat of tinted stucco, decorative ironwork. He did these planters, all the original planters, all the original tile is still here, which is incredible. His design had an informal, handmade character that made it really stylish and really offbeat and popular with artists, and a lot of artists moved onto the street. His style and the concept of preserving and maintaining these buildings and remodeling them caught on across the city. And in the 100 years since, Block Beautiful has hosted many interesting stories, famous people, and they've kept up the beautiful designs of the homes. Here's one of my favorites on the street. It has these ceramic reliefs of giraffes, and they have a weird story. They're by the artist Robert Winthrop Chandler, who was pretty well known at the time. And he wanted to create what he called his ideal house of fantasy, which was filled with all of his own artwork. The giraffes are there because they're based on one of his most famous paintings. Famous social realist painter George Bellows from the Ashcan School lived in this one. Probably his most famous painting is the boxers Dempsey versus Firpo. And here's a painting of his daughter in nearby Gramercy Park. The Ashcan School focused on street scenes, often of the underclass, the poor in the city. Bellows built himself an attic studio. Several of these buildings have northward-facing skylights and windows, perfect for artist studios. Fellow Ashcan School artist Robert Henry lived down the street at Gramercy Park as well. This gorgeous house has 2 jockey hitching posts out front. They marked the home of Edward Ted Britt Fusing, who lived from 1891 to 1962. He was a famous sportscaster who was largely responsible for the concept of play-by-play broadcasting as we know it, hence the jockeys. As we walk down the street, we can see the former home of fashion designer Oleg Cassidy. This one actually looks a little bit like Tudor City. At one point, Cassini was engaged to Grace Kelly, who some people at the time considered attractive. Later, Cassini's first wife was a cough syrup heiress. Then his second wife was actress Jean Tierney. She ended up having an affair with JFK, which broke up the couple's marriage. At 132 East 19th Street behind me, the residents included muckraking journalist Ida Tarbell, society painter Cecilia Bow, and actresses Lillian Gish and Ethel Barrymore. Frederick Sterner, the architect I mentioned before, his brother lived here as well. Lincoln Kirsten, co-founder of the New York City Ballet and its director for 40 years, lived in this one behind me. This one was a former carriage house and also a showroom for fancy Italian cars, even though it looks like maybe only one car could fit in there. Anyway, it has this really nice Dutch styling on it. A newspaper once called this one the most beautiful house in the city. It also has mimosa trees in front of it, which I've always liked. They're also known as Persian silk trees, and they have this beautiful pink, fluffy flower. Personally, I think this one is another contender for most beautiful. This ivy-covered building, it's just gorgeous. It has this weird Death Star window, and imagine my surprise one day when I walked up and looked in it on my tiptoes and saw a stuffed monkey and stuffed mice as well. There are weird things that you find in New York. Another historical tidbit about the building is that in the 1970s, it became the first freestanding legal abortion clinic in the Western world. So this finishes up Block Beautiful, but there are a couple other things nearby that I thought were fun that I wanted to mention. Irving Place was named by Samuel Ruggles in the 1830s, not Muggles, Ruggles, in the 1830s to honor his friend Washington Irving, who's the famous author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. There's a house 2 blocks down that has a plaque on it saying Washington Irving lived here, but he didn't live there. It's a complete urban legend, so don't believe everything you read on a plaque. His son lived next door, actually, and Oscar Wilde lived there as well. And Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, lived a block down, but Washington Irving did not live in that house. Lastly, we have famous Pete's Tavern. You know it's famous because it says so on the sign right there. It's where the short story author O. Henry wrote Gift to the Magi, and where the author Ludwig Bemelmans wrote Madeline. You know, in an old house in Paris all covered with vines, that one. Pete's is either Manhattan's oldest or second oldest bar, if you believe their sign or if you believe the internet. It was even open during Prohibition, in which it was disguised as a florist shop. A lot of people were easily fooled by things during Prohibition. And that was Block Beautiful. Thanks for watching. Hope you get a chance to visit sometime. Be sure to like and subscribe to learn more about New York, one block at a time. Thanks.